Welcome to again to this deep dive about Donorfy and direct debits. My name is Graham Dunn, and I work with the Donorfy team as an implementation consultant, and I'll be guiding you through our presentation today. Just as a way of knowing what we're going to cover, here's a brief outline of the agenda. Just to start with, there are other members of the Donorfy team on this call, and they will answer any questions as we go and at the end. See, we have loads of clients as well, so it's great to see you all and to be part of this presentation. We're going to cover what a direct debit is, and then we're going to look at the two ways that Donorfy provides support for direct debits and how those processes work, the pros and cons of each, the costs and the processes. And then we're going to look at other direct debit solutions that have integrated with Donorfy, such as Rapidata. And then we'll look at how we get started with direct debits. Post this presentation, there are a number of resources already in our knowledge base. So if you haven't been there, do go to support.donorfy.com, and there's loads of information there also about this topic. So firstly, what is a direct debit? Well, a direct debit is an instruction from one of your supporters to their bank, which authorizes you to collect an amount of money from their account at a given frequency on a given date. And that is called a mandate that is set up. You, as the organization, have control of the amount of money that you can take and the frequency, but obviously the donor has to sign to agree what that is. The supporter can cancel at any time, and direct debit, just so you're aware, is the brand name for the company that runs direct debits on behalf of all the UK banks. So you may also hear it referred to as BACS. A direct debit, though, is not a standing order. A standing order is an instruction from the donor to their bank to pay directly into your bank account, and you have no control over that as an organization. It just arrives, and obviously if a donor wants to make a change to a standing order, they have to either log on to their online banking, or they have to go into their bank and get the bank to change it on their behalf. And also, a direct debit is not linked to a credit or debit card recurring payment, so they are separate. So why would we consider using direct debits for income? Well, they are a really good way of collecting recurring income. Bank accounts don't expire, so unlike credit card recurring payments, you won't need to go back to the donor and ask for new card details. Therefore, it improves retention. Supporters are protected with the direct debit guarantee. So if there is an error, they will get immediate payback. They will be notified in advance of any changes to their direct debit, whether that be frequency or amount, and they have a right to cancel at any time. From a customer service point of view, it enables you to deal directly with the donor and take control. So if a donor rings up and says, I'd now like to give more money, you can process that. You can have variable amounts, so you can increase the amount for a membership, say. So at the end of a year, if the fee went up, you can increase the direct debit as long as you tell the member. And direct debits are trusted. 73% of household bills are paid by a direct debit, and 90% of UK adults have at least one direct debit. So it's a well-known process for taking money, and it is really cost-effective. It is often cheaper than card payments. So managing direct debits. Previously, with direct debits, they were only really accessible to organisations with a significant turnover, and they weren't for smaller organisations. They've also been, I think, perceived to be complicated with lots of acronyms, and they've required specialist knowledge and potentially specialist software and processes to understand and to be able to administer them. But with the likes of modern payment gateways like GoCardless and specialist companies, direct debits are now a really easy way and a cost-effective way for you as a charity to take regular income. So how does a direct debit work? Well, the first thing that needs to happen is the supporter needs to sign up, and you will need to then create a mandate with BACS. Now, the mandate is basically the frequency and the amount that, the mandate is the thing that allows you to collect the money at a given frequency and in a given amount. So basically, you're setting up an agreement between the supporter and the bank that says you as an organisation can take money from their bank account. So if you were to log on to your online banking and probably look in your own bank account, you'd see all the mandates for all the companies that are taking bills or donations from your bank account. This at this stage may be rejected, but you'd be given a reason why that was rejected. And at this stage, the supporter is notified. They're also given a copy of the direct debit guarantee. And then from that point on, you can start collecting money. When payment is due to be collected, the collection request is submitted to BACS. There's a 3-day working cycle, and so the money is paid into your account, and if the transaction fails, you will also be notified. If the amount or the date changes because something in the process hasn't quite worked, or there's an upgrade or price increase, then the supporter is notified of the new amount and the new date. So, Donorfy features for managing DDs. Within the professional plan of Donorfy, we offer a fully integrated solution with GoCardless. We also offer what we refer to as electronic fund transfer, or EFT for short, which is the functionality that allows you to use a third-party BACS software to process your direct debits. So you can continue, if you've already got a direct debit processor in your organization and you're using software, then you can use that with Donorfy by exporting and importing files. And then there are other options provided by other organizations. So Rapidata, who many of you may have heard of, have recently just integrated their service with the Donorfy via our API. And then there are other platforms out there like Captain8 and Charity Checkout, who are also offering a fully serviced direct debit option for you and your charity. So why are there multiple solutions to this? Well, first and foremost, we integrated with GoCardless because this enabled us to give you, our clients, the most automated and seamless integration. But we also understood that for many of our clients, they already had an existing process or an existing setup, and they were quite happy using that setup, and therefore we created EFT so that those charities could do it. The advantage of, or one of the advantages of EFT is that you don't necessarily have to have an email address, where with GoCardless, unless you're on their most advanced package, you need to have 100% emails. And some organisations didn't have or don't have enough monthly income to use the migration process, which is called bulk change, to GoCardless. But we'll cover more of that later in the presentation. And then Rapidata, recently they've been well established in the sector. A lot of charities have been using them, and they, as an organisation, wanted a way for their Donorfy clients to be able to get their direct debit data into the CRM. So they have developed a solution, which again we'll cover later in the presentation. So just to give you a comparison about the two Donorfy options that come with the Pro setup, just in terms of setting up and what you need. With Donorfy and GoCardless, you don't need a BACS service user number, though if you already have one, they can make use of that. And there's no additional software to maintain, install, or upgrade. It's all done over the internet. Whereas if you were to use EFT, you would need to be a BACS service user, and you would need software that would need to be managed and upgraded, and would need to be approved by BACS. In terms of the process for signing up your supporters, when someone signs up, that is automated, so Donorfy and GoCardless work seamlessly, so that would come into Donorfy and be automatically lodged. With online sign-ups, you can use our widget, which we'll give some examples of later in the presentation. They again come straight into Donorfy. Paper-based mandates. You can use paper-based mandates for GoCardless, but you do need to be on their Pro solution. And all notifications with GoCardless are email and automated. If you compare the EFT solution, you're going to be exporting a file from Donorfy and importing that into your BACS software and transmitting that to BACS for both your lodgements and your payments. For online sign-ups, you would potentially be able to get the information into Donorfy, but you'd need a developer to get that information in via the API. Depending on your BACS software, again, online paper-based mandates may be acceptable. And notifications, again, there may be manual process for those to go out, but again, it depends on the BACS software and your internal procedures. In terms of collecting the money, GoCardless and Donorfy will do that daily, based on the collection day in the RPIs and the frequency, and we'll cover what an RPI is later in the presentation. Whereas the EFT will depend on probably how many days you're offering, in kind of payment dates that you and your organisation are offering. So because it's more manual, you may not allow your supporters to say that you want to take money on any day of the month. You may only offer 2 or 3 dates in that month, and then you would have to have processes to make sure that that was covered. So again, it just depends how big your team is, I guess, and how much money you're taking, to how many times you need to kind of import and export CSV files. In terms of cost, GoCardless do charge 1% for each transaction, up to a minimum of 20p and a max of 2p. There may be a cost to integrate our widgets into your current website, just to make them look and feel that as though they're part of your website. There is an additional £50 a month cost with GoCardless if you want more control over the process and you want your name to go on the bank statement. If you want to see more about their pricing model, then do go to GoCardless.com, and all the up-to-date costs will be there. In terms of the EFT process, you've got to factor in the cost of buying and supporting the BACS software. You You may want a web agency, depending on your volume, to build you an online form that can come into Donorfy, so that you're not manually inputting all the Donorfy costs. And then, as I've already alluded to, there are manual processes in terms of importing and exporting files, and obviously there's a labour cost to doing that. So again, you probably would want to factor in a member of staff's time to be able to do that and manage that process. So the first solution that we're going to look at is GoCardless. We're going to look at how that works with Donorfy and your website. We're going to look at the integration and look at how that works. So just to give an overview of how the data may flow, we start by looking at your website. Someone's browsing your website, and at that point they decide that they're going to give you some money or pledge you some money on a pledge you some money. Once that form is filled in, that will say the amount that they're pledging. It will say the frequency that they would like that money to come out of that bank account. So that could be monthly, yearly, etc. And that form will fire information off to GoCardless and Donorfy without you intervening. GoCardless then do everything that they need to set up the mandate with BACS, and check that they've got all the information that they need so that you could start collecting money. When it comes to taking money, Donorfy will notify GoCardless that it's time for a collection to take place, and GoCardless will then talk to BACS and make sure that the money is collected and that it ends up in your bank account. So we've already mentioned RPIs. They stand for Recurring Payment Instructions. If you're not familiar with what they are, they're basically an instruction or a pledge for a regular donation or membership. They can be found on a timeline within Donorfy. So the screenshot here is just showing my timeline, showing my recurring payment instruction. If someone fills in a form on GoCardless, you don't have to manually input this. It automatically will come in and do this for you. We support frequencies of monthly, yearly, quarterly, and half yearly. And we also support multiple allocations. So I could be giving £12 a month, but that could be split to two funds. So in this example, £6 is going to the general fund and £6 is going to the building fund. But you can have as many allocations as you want. We'll come on to this later, but we also support upgrades. So if I was to ring in today and say that I now want to give £18 a month, then we could upgrade this RPI and allocate it to a new campaign. The upgrade amount and the existing £12 would still be allocated to the winter warmer campaign. Just to say, RPIs can be used to manage payments from other third-party direct debit providers as well, and are used when we are using EFT, which we'll come on to later in the presentation. An RPI is related to GoCardless in two ways. So when you're setting up a RPI and you're using GoCardless, you need to make sure that the collection method is GoCardless, and you also need to make sure that the GoCardless mandate ID is populated. Now, these are automatically set up for you, so if a support signs up online, it is set up. But if you were setting this up manually, say someone rung in, then you would need to set it up on GoCardless and on Donorfy, and make sure that the mandate ID matched, so that when we're due to take payment, Donorfy can send the right information to GoCardless. So how do we go about setting up GoCardless and connecting it to Donorfy? Well, to do this, you need to be able to have access to settings. So you may need your system admin to do this on your behalf. But you go into settings and go into configuration, and then from the menu or the drop down that appears, you need to go to the GoCardless Connect section. You'll see a screen like this that has a big blue button. If you click on that big blue button, you're taken to the GoCardless website, where you will need to sign in with your email address and password. So at this point, you already need to be registered with GoCardless and have an account set up with them. Then when you have done that, you click connect your account, and back in Donorfy, your settings screen will then change and say you are connected. Under the you are connected section, we've just introduced notifications, so you can now set up custom notifications. A notification is set up again in settings. If you would go to letters and acknowledgements, you can set up the templates. It is really important that these custom notifications are approved by Donorfy support, and they must be checked before you use them to make sure that all the information that needs to be in them is in them. But the beauty of custom notifications is that it just allows for your branding and your tone of voice, it just makes it look less like GoCardless. But we'll come on to notifications in a bit more detail later in the presentation. So what could GoCardless look like on your website, and what could the journey involve? LICC have just set up their donation journey, and in this example you can see that someone is about to give £10 and give every month. So they'd click on next, they'd fill in all their details, so their name, address, and in this example you only need to enter kind of your postcode, and then there's the address lookup. And then when you get to the next stage, you get taken to a GoCardless form, and we will pre-populate this with as much information as we've already collected, but the donor at this point will need to put in their bank account details, so their sort code and their account number, and then they will set up the direct debit from this stage. Now this page has limited customization that is available. GoCardless specify that you have to go to this page, but you can brand it with your logo, but it can't be an iframe, it just has to be this page, and that's part of GoCardless's process. Just to show that it doesn't necessarily need to look like this, so the Heart of England Forest have customized it in this way, and then there are a few other kind of instances here. So whatever your website looks like, the widget can be fully integrated and look that it is part of your site. It would just need a web developer to do that. So in all these instances, Donorfy hasn't been involved in any of the styling of these sites. These charities have used their own web developers to use our widget and to then process the direct debit with GoCardless. So what happens if you're already using GoCardless and want to link it to Donorfy? Well, you will need to do the following. You'll need to connect Donorfy, as I've just shown you, to your GoCardless accounts in the settings. If you want to use the custom notifications, you'll need to get them set up and get them approved. Please do get them approved, because if GoCardless know that notifications going out that haven't been approved, then we may lose this feature. You will need to turn off plans and subscriptions in GoCardless. So GoCardless support will do this in bulk for you, but this will stop GoCardless from collecting the money. We'll then need to populate Donorfy with the RPIs, which we've shown you, using the file uploader, and then this will cause Donorfy to start collecting the money from your supporters. If you don't turn off the plans, then GoCardless will take the money and Donorfy will collect the money. So your donor will pay twice. So it's really important that turning off the plans happens. And we suggest that you test it with a few of your supporters to start with. So test it, run it, and then migrate the rest when you're happy. So maybe you're thinking GoCardless is great and you've already got another direct debit solution happening. So it is possible to migrate from another provider. Again, you'll need to set up an account with GoCardless and connect it to Donorfy. You'll again need to get approval for your custom notifications. And then you'll need to move the mandates from your legacy direct debit provider to GoCardless. And there are two ways of doing this. You can either do it manually or you can do it using what GoCardless refer to as the bulk change. So which approach would you take? So bulk change, it takes 4 to 6 weeks to do. The support will be notified by a letter, but they will not need to take any action. However, it requires all your supporters to have an email address, and GoCardless have put a minimum amount that you take per month. So you have to be taking over 10K to be able to use their bulk change. However, if you don't meet those required criteria, you can do it manually, but you would have to contact each supporter and ask them to switch. And of course, that does have a risk of attrition, but potentially it would give you an opportunity to perhaps upgrade your supporters and tell them that you are moving your direct debit solution to help with your administration costs and streamline your processes. So we've mentioned notifications now quite a lot. By default, if you do nothing and don't set up custom notifications, GoCardless will send out their standard notifications, and this happens on the creation of a new mandate and then for each payment that is being collected. These take place from GoCardless to the supporter, and you have no control over the content or the brand. So they look like this, and then they just keep coming. So if someone was giving to you monthly, they would get 12 emails a month saying that payment was about to be taken. However, now with Donorfy able to take control of your notifications, you will get a notification sent to your supporter for a new mandate. So it will have the bank details, amount, frequency and date in it. And again, only if the amount changes or the date. It allows you to suppress the per payment notifications. So if you don't want to your supporter to get 12 emails from you reminding them that they have a direct debit with you, they would just get one. And they are branded from your organization. So as I've already mentioned, you can make them, the look and feel look like it's from you instead of GoCardless. And here's an example from the Heart of England Forest of what one of their notifications look like. And you can see it's got their kind of header, their footer, but it does also have like the direct debit logo and obviously who is providing their payments. So just some questions that we often get asked about GoCardless. What happens if a payment fails? Well, GoCardless will email the account holder, so you, the organization, but also an activity will get created on the constituents timeline. If a payment does fail, then you would need to follow that up with a supporter. If someone cancels a direct debit with their bank instead of you, then the RPI in Donorfy will automatically get cancelled and therefore stop collecting. If someone calls up to cancel their direct debit, then you as the organisation can go and find their RPI on their timeline, click on the manage button and click cancel. You can have a payment holiday. So if someone brings up and says, I can't afford to give for the next 6 months, then you can pause their RPI, which is quite a nifty feature. It means that you don't cancel it and then have to kind of remember to set it up again. If someone upgrades, then we can attribute the extra money to the upgrade campaign. So if you've got a campaign going and you want to actually measure the success of that campaign, you can see how much money that campaign has generated, upgrading your RPI. And GoCardless does allow on its Pro edition for a mandate to be set up without an email address, but the standard out-of-the-box GoCardless really requires everyone to have an email address, and all the notifications are handled by email, so it's best if email addresses are there. Just before we move on, I thought it'd be good just to show you RPI in Donorfy. So we have someone here. This is their timeline. If we click on recurring payment instruction, we'll see that this person has a number of RPIs set up, but the one here that we're interested in is the GoCardless monthly payment. So here you can see the collection method of GoCardless and the mandate ID that we were talking about, and the payments and the allocations. But the thing we've just kind of covered with the frequently asked questions is this manage button, and this allows you to upgrade, cancel, pause, and send a notification if they didn't get a notification that they were expecting. So there's quite a lot of functionality in here that allows you to manage what a donor does and how much they give and how regularly that money is taken. So that's really the GoCardless integration, and we're now going to move on to EFT and BACS software, so that you understand how this might work. Again, someone decides to give, and they might decide to give to you by the website, or by paper or forms, or by the phone. That then needs to come into Donorfy. So at some point we need to export the we need to either manually input the paper forms into Donorfy, and then with the ones from the website, unless you've built an integration, you would need to kind of either export them or into a CSV file, or again manually input them, so that Donorfy has all the RPI information set up as we've been looking at it. We would then need to export a CSV file for the mandate and import that into our BACS software. And then our BACS software would talk directly to BACS, so it would set up, it would send the mandates across, and then the same for the payment file. So we do the payment file on regularly, and we'd import that into our BACS software, and again our BACS software would talk directly to BACS. So to summarize how electronic fund transfer works, EFT can be used, as we've already mentioned, with other direct debit providers. The first thing we'll need to do is set up a collection method in the settings and configuration, so that we understand how the files are configured and who we're dealing with. We'll export a lodgement file from Donorfy that will collect all the new direct debit mandates that have been set up and send them off to BACS so that we have permission to take the money. We'll then export payment files on a monthly or weekly basis, and then send those payment files via the third-party software to BACS. And then when confirmation comes back and the money is in our bank, we'll update the payments on Donorfy as paid. No, we can also send cancellation files. So if someone rings up and says, I've cancelled my direct debit, we can then send a file that would basically tell BACS that that mandate is now closed, and they would remove it from the system. So how do we go about producing some of these files in Donorfy? Under the financial section of Donorfy in your menu, as long as you've got access to it, you'll see a menu. You'll see varying options. One of the options under there is EFT, and when you go to your EFT screen, you'll see a number of tabs across the top, and it's the middle tab that we're looking at that says Create Lodgement File. If you click on the blue button, once you've chosen the collection method, which is here, in Create Lodgement File, it will go away, create that lodgement file, and then if you click on Download, you will then get a file. Now, when we set up the collection methods, we can set up what comes out in these files. So depending on what your BACS software needs, we Donorfy can make sure that it meets the needs of the software. And it's a very similar process for an EFT batch of accepted payments. So again, you go to the financial menu, go to EFT, go to EFT batches. You would select or select the collection method that you wanted, the month that you wanted, and the date range that you wanted. You click on Create Batch, and it would give you a summary, and then once that batch has been processed, it would come into the available downloads. You'd click on Download, and again, you'd get your file that you can send off to collect that payment. To see a batch of expected payments, again, we'd go to Finance and we'd go to Batch Transactions this time. We'd notice that our batch is then in Donorfy, and if we opened our batch, now we would see that our expected payments would be in there. Now, obviously, in this case, there was one, but obviously, in your case, hopefully there'd be a lot more. And we would mark these all as paid, and then if any had not been paid, we could just mark a couple as not being paid. So say we were expecting £1,000 in for this batch, and we only got £900 back in our bank account, and 2 people had failed to give £50. We just go and find those 2 people, mark them as not paid, and then our amount in this batch and on the bank account would match, and then we would just post this batch for £900 and potentially contact the 2 people whose payments had failed. So that's kind of a summary of EFT. How do we manage DDs from other platforms like Donate, Charity Checkout? So the first thing you need to do is decide whether you want RPIs plus transactions or just transactions. And the advantage of the RPI is that it provides you with the opportunity to see the expected payments, and then you can see who has paid and who hasn't paid, and it allows you to allocate all of the payments that come in for that RPI to the campaign and fund and product, and have multiple allocations, etc. You can use the file uploader to import these files, whether you decide to use RPIs or transactions, or if it's available, depending on the platform that you're using, there might be a technical option to do the API, but everything is there in the file uploader. You could also use bits of it. You could do an EFT batch as well and then import those payments, but the references on the RPIs would have to be the same as the references on the RPI would need to be the reference that your direct debit provider provides so that it knows which RPI is paying off. So lastly, Rapidata. This is an integration that is new. It's still being tested, but it is to be released really, really shortly. So if you're a Rapidata customer, this is coming soon. Robin has seen it. He's just testing it and approving it before we release it, but it will be there. So how does Rapidata work with Donorfy? Again, someone decides they want to make a regular gift. You would use a Rapidata form on your website, or potentially paper and phone again, and that information needs to get to Rapidata. So if it's on your website using one of those forms, that will automatically pass into Rapidata. If you're doing it manually, you're going to have to make sure that the data goes into Rapidata. Rapidata talks to BACS. They manage the entire process, so a bit like GoCardless. It would sits there, and then Rapidata pass information into Donorfy. So they'd pass constituents. If they've opted into gift aid, they'll set up a gift aid declaration for you. Then they'll pass the transactions each month or whatever the frequency is, and put them on the timeline of the constituent. But note, for this integration, there are no RPIs. So you would know that it's a regular gift because you could have a payment method of Rapidata, and you could auto tag constituents to show that they have a direct debit. So you can tell that they've got a regular payment. There won't be an RPI set up because Rapidata hold all that information in their system, and they're just sending the transactions each time to Donorfy. So the Rapidata integration will look a bit like this when you go in. So you'll be able to set up a default product, fund and campaign, but then for additional sources, you'll be able to kind of change that. So if you've got different forms on your website or different forms that you're manually processing, you'll be able to say, okay, for this source code, make sure it's this product, this campaign, and this fund. So there is quite a bit of configuration in there. You'll also need to make sure that you've authorized Rapidata to send the information via the API. So it will ask you for the API key and access key, which you can find in your settings in Donorfy. And then each month, as you can see, there'll be a direct debit via Rapidata for your constituent. So the payments will arrive nicely in Donorfy. So to conclude this presentation, there are three main options really with direct debits and Donorfy. One is GoCardless, one is EFT, and one is Rapidata's integration. If you don't have a direct debit program in place and you're looking to get started with direct debits, then we'd really advise that you go with GoCardless. It gives you a really deep, feature-rich integration that works seamlessly and really can be hands-off in terms of, your donor signs up on your website. That all ends up in Donorfy. Donorfy processes that as and when and makes sure that money is collected, and it manages all the notifications. So there really is not a lot you need to do once it's set up and going. If, however, you've got an in-house direct debit program in place and you've got third-party software, then EFT is for you. And once you've got that configured and set up, Donorfy will make sure that it's generating all the files that you need. And then if you're already using Rapidata and you like their service approach, and you want a totally managed service, then Rapidata's integration hopefully will help you now get all that payment information directly into Donorfy. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for coming. Just to remind you that this webinar will end up on Donorfy chat, and that there are knowledge-based articles on support at Donorfy. I'm going to stop the recording now and just